Hi, welcome to this video from Augmenting Creativity, which is a workshop that's running at the Creativity and Cognition Conference 2022. In this series of videos, we're going through some AI tools that could be useful for enhancing creative practice. They're simple, accessible tools that can be brought into creative work in a variety of ways. The tool that we're going to be looking at in this video is Runway ML. Runway ML is an online tool. You can access it via the browser. And it offers quite a range of AI and machine learning functionality for creatives. It's designed for people who aren't necessarily have a coding background or don't have technical knowledge of AI, but they can use AI in creative ways. So it's a really useful tool for the kind of purposes that we're looking at. What I'm going to focus on in this video is the ability of Runway ML to train models. So in other words, this is your kind of chance to train an AI on some images or some text that is your own, that is from your own work or is references that you're interested in. Unlike some of the other tools that we've looked at in these videos, which don't really offer the ability to train models based on your own images, this one does. And what this means is that you could potentially train a model on your own work. So you could take lots of images of your own designs, your own sketches, your own outcomes, and train a model on that and then see what the model produces when it's being trained on your own work. Or it might be that you want to train it on a particular set of references, on images that you've taken of inspiration or things that you want to sort of include within your creative work. So Runway gives you the opportunity to do that. Runway offers a lot of other features as well. Primarily, it's focused at video editing, so it offers machine learning tools for quickly and easily doing video editing and doing things like green screen effects. So it's really useful to check out from that point of view. But we're going to look at the sort of the generation tools and the model training tools. The area that we're looking at within Runway is ML Lab, so you're going to need to check out that part of the site. And it's worth saying that this part of Runway you do have to pay for. So unlike the other tools that we're looking at in these videos, there is a small charge for this part of Runway and for this kind of functionality. And that's because it does take a lot of processing time to complete the kind of tasks that we're looking at for things like training models. And therefore there has to be some costs incurred in that process. But it's fairly minimal, it's fairly accessible. So to do the kind of tasks that we're looking at today, you would need to have a subscription to Runway, which starts from $15 US. And you can do the kind of the training tasks that we're looking at for probably another $15. So the way that the payments work on Runway is that you buy credits. So as well as a monthly subscription, for the particular tasks that you want to perform, you'll be charged credits, and we'll look at that in a bit more detail in this video. It's small amounts of money for each kind of training loop that you do, but depending on the type of work that you do, it might amount to to a small amount of money. So we'll look at that, and we'll look at the processes involved in it. The fact that this is credit-based means that it's never going to run up a huge bill that you don't know about. You buy credits in advance, and it just uses the credits that you've already purchased. So we're going to take a look at this. As I say, it's all browser-based, so the first thing you need to do is go to the Runway ML website, and the URL for that is on the screen now. Okay, once you've gone to the Runway site, you're going to need to set up an account. So you go through the normal process for signing in and creating accounts. Once you've signed in, you then need to find the part of Runway that allows you to do the kind of work that we're doing today, which is training models and generating text or images based on those models. So the part of the site you need to go to is called Runway ML Lab. And you can find a link for that up in your user section. So you go to the top right of the screen, you can see your user information, and there's a link there to ML Lab. So I'm going to click on that. So this part of the site is for sort of more experimental, more generative stuff. And the first thing that we see here is lots of models that have already been created, and there's many models hosted on Runway that allow you to do all kinds of things. So video editing stuff, animation, generating images based on models which have already been trained, image analysis, and you can kind of scroll through here and you can look at these in more detail. Our focus in this session though is going to be training our own models. So uploading lots of images and then making a model based on those images, which can then generate new images based on the library that we've given it. So to train your own model, the area that you're going to need to go to is training. So over on the left here, you'll see that there's a training link. If we click on that, it gives us a few options. So there's different types of models that you can train. You can train an image model. So this is giving Runway a great deal of images, so hundreds and hundreds of images based on a certain theme or images of a certain subject, and then training on those. Once that model has been created, it can then generate images in the same style. The text one, as you would imagine, is the same kind of thing, but for text. So you give it hundreds of pages of text. It will then learn that kind of style of text, and then you can use Runway to then generate new text based on that. The third one that it offers is new, and that's for object detection. So that's if you're wanting to classify images, classify objects within images. You can train it to learn new types of image. The one that I'm going to look at in this session is the image one, because that gives us some opportunities to sort of generate visuals, to generate images based on our training model. So if you click on image, the first thing it will ask you to do is to set up a new project, a new training experiment. So you can give it whatever name that you'd like, or stick with the one that it suggests. What it needs to have to train a model is a lot of data. So it needs lots of, in this case, images. And as you can see on the screen here, it's asking for a data set of between 500 to 5,000 images. So it's a great deal of images that you need to collect. There's various ways of doing this, and there are links on the Runway site for some strategies for how to sort of create these images. If you were wanting to create a model based on your own work, for example, you can create images quite quickly. It doesn't need to be necessarily images of 500 different pieces of work. It can be sort of one piece of work that you photograph from different sides, different angles. In Runway's help guide, they suggest maybe taking a video of work or video of object that you're interested in training, and then taking stills from that video, and that way you can quite quickly generate quite a lot of images. In the example that I'm going to show you today, I've gathered a database of images based on vases, so historical vases, and these are from the British Museum website. So another strategy for kind of training your own model might be that you're training it on existing work, other people's work or existing objects. So you might want to find a database of images that already exist. And you can find some databases for that and models based on that in ML Lab's own models that we saw on the previous screen. So the one that the database that I've created is based on these vases. So historical vases, Greek, Roman, Chinese vases, and there's just over 500 images there, which are just taken from the database that's on the British Museum's website. You can see some other images and things that I've done in previous experiments, but we're going to concentrate on this one today. So if you were going to upload your own images, it's quite simple. You can just upload a data set here, and it will then ask for certain images. So you can find your images, upload them, so a folder full of images. In this case, we're going to use the images that already exist though. So I'm going to click on this one. It will then give you options for pre-processing the dataset. So the training works best if images are fairly consistent. So in other words, the image size, image quality is the same, but also things like the cropping is the same, the background is the same. So clicking on that will give you some options to go through and do things like auto cropping or random cropping or processing it in different ways, naming it, changing elements of the file. So you can do that. There are some options later on for doing that as well. Or it might be that that's something you do as part of the image generation in the first place, so going through getting files ready before you upload them. So if we've selected our images, we've uploaded images, or we've used images which are already uploaded, the next thing we need to do is click Next. So this will then give us our training options. The most important thing we need to select at this stage is an existing model that we're going to sort of retrain with our images. So to speed up this process of creating a machine learning model, the system uses a model that is already existing, that's already been trained on a certain type of image. And then what happens in the training process is it then looks at your images in particular and sort of relearns the model for your particular images. So the more training you do, the existing images, the existing model, quite quickly disappears, and it then starts to learn the traits of your new images. But it does help if you can choose an existing model that sort of roughly conforms to the type of images that you're looking at. It just kind of speeds up that process, and it makes it more likely that it's going to generate images in the end which are sort of more accurately aligned with the images in your database. So it gives us some sort of broad options here. So we can choose to train using an existing model that's based on faces or objects, in this case cars, or scenes, so pictures of landscapes, or illustrations. So you can choose an existing model that sort of conforms with yours. So in my case, because this is vases, I'm not going to choose faces or landscapes. I'm going to choose objects because it's sort of most aligned with this type of image. There are some advanced options. So if you click the tab for advanced, you can choose some other pre-trained models. But I think in our case, we're just going to keep it on objects and go from there. So select your one that sort of most conforms to your images. Then you need to move over to this section on the right, which allows you again to do some cropping. So if you haven't already sort of cropped your images, if your image sizes are all slightly different, or that the object itself appears in different places, it's useful to do some cropping so that you're just looking at the image itself. So you can choose to center crop, so it will just crop it based on what's in the center of the image. You can choose random crop, it will select a different part of it each time, or if you've already done the cropping, then you can select no crop. But center crop is a good sort of first step. So once you've chosen the cropping, the next thing you need to do is choose how long to train this for. So how many steps that you want within this training process. So as a sort of general rule of thumb, the more steps that you have, the better it will learn your particular images, and the more accurately the results will be aligned with the images that you're training on. So if you have too few steps here, then it might not learn your images too well, and you might find that what it's generating actually looks more like the pre-trained model that it's based on. So in our case, if we didn't have enough steps in, we'd get image results that look less like vases and look more like cars. So you need enough steps to be able to do that, and they have a recommended sort of starting point, which is 3,000 steps. So you can stick with that. You can add some more steps. The thing to bear in mind here, though, is that each step does cost. So we can click here on estimated cost, and it will tell us how many credits we're going to use. So the cost per step is 0.005 cents. So there's not much. It's not a great deal of money, but obviously over 3,000 steps that does build up. So 3,000 steps is going to come out at $15. So at this point, if you haven't got credit, you might need to add some credit, so just using a card. As I said before, everything is based on credit, so you can't run up a massive bill. It will tell you how much something's going to cost in advance. You put the credit in there, and it will just use up to the credit you've got, and then it will stop. It is possible to continue training a model, so it's usually a good idea to maybe start with the the default that it gives you. 3,000 steps is fine. If you find it's not quite giving you the results that you want, you can always do further training later on. So I would probably start with this, make sure that you have the credits that you need to do that, and then when you're ready, you start training. So click the Start Training button. So we're not going to kind of demonstrate the whole training process now because as it says there in the estimate, it's likely to take 2 hours. So I've already done a training session for this and we'll look at the results of that. But once you have started training, we'll then go to a screen just telling you that the training is in progress. As this is all happening in the clouds, you're free to close your browser, close your computer, you can go away, you can come back, and it will continue training in the background. And Runway will send you an email and let you know when your training is complete and your model is ready to use and to look at. So once that happens, the first thing you'll do is it will take you to a screen that will show you your model and it will show you some examples of your model. So that's quite an interesting moment where you can see the kind of images that it's producing based on the model, based on the amount of steps that it's done. So this, in the training that I did, the screen it took me to gave me this video. So this is a run through of the kind of the generation that's going on. So it's producing different images based on the images of vases that I've given it. So this is sort of what's called a latent spacewalk. So it's going through lots of different possibilities of generated vases based on the model that it's created. So this will very quickly, once you can see this, will give you an idea of how successful your training has gone. Has it sort of created, is it generating the images that you want it to? Has it learnt the type of object or the type of scene that you're trying to train it on? And in this case, we can see, yeah, it's producing things that look like vases. And obviously it's producing multiple sort of iterations there and it's looping through them. But you can then use the system to generate specific images or generate different videos, and we'll look at that next. So once you've trained your model and you've got a model ready to use, it will appear in the My Models section. So over in the left-hand menu, you click on My Models. You can click in there and you'll see all the models that you've already trained. So I've got a few in here, and the latest one is the one that I've trained on vases. And again, it will give you a sort of a preview there, so you can see little thumbnails of the type of images that it's producing based on our model. There's various things you can now do. You can use this model in various ways. The first thing that I would do is click in, once you've hovered over your model, click down here in the bottom left and it says Edit Info. So if you click on that, it's going to give you a sort of rundown of your model and also give you some options of things that you can then do with it. And it will give you a gallery as well, so you can sort of see this gallery of images that it's already created as part of its training process, and you can see the kind of things which are already there. But obviously you might want to then generate particular images or generate new videos based on that. So the easiest way of doing that is within this screen to click on Export Images and Videos. Once you click on that, it's then going to give you some options for the type of images or the type of videos that you might want to prepare as a sort of generated result from your model. Over on the right, you can see there's two main export options. One is to generate a latent walk video, so that's like the video that I showed previously. Or the other option there is generate images. So that's if you just want to generate specific images from the model. It will load a preview in the background. Because it's generating new images based on the model, that might take a few seconds to do, but you'll see some examples there. So this is kind of the images that we've got. These are the ones that we can then save. We can produce different ones, or we can go through some options to actually generate a specific amount. So we can export, for example, 500 images and then go through those, download them, and see if they kind of if the content of those generated images are the type of things that you want. So you can export images here, or you can export a new video. So if you click on the video option, it will then give you an option of what kind of animated walkthrough of these images you want to produce. And the way that it will work is kind of going between 2 points. So you can see on the bottom here, it's got a starting point, which is this vase, and an end point, which is this vase. And it will sort of animate in between these two. So it will then create lots of different options of vase that sort of morph between this and this one. We can also add a third if we want, so we can add a separate vase in here. And we can control how long we want this to last, and then we can export the results of that, which means that you can then download those, and you can do what you want with them. You can use them in your creative work as you wish. So those are the export options, and a good way of generating content quite quickly based on your model. If we go back to the main kind of model screen, there's other things you can do as well. If we were just to click on our model, or even if we were to go down here to add workspace, we'll then add our model to the sort of work area which Runway calls Workspace. So Workspace is where you can bring different models together, where you can ask those models to perform different tasks, which will depend on the type of model they are. And in this case, for a model for generating images, it will give you an interface where you can quite easily generate new images. So this is a workspace. It will set up the workspace automatically for you. You can see our model is in there, ready to go. So it gives us some options for playing around and doing different things with it. The kind of first thing this allows you to do really is to have a bit more control over the type of images which are generated based on your model. So it allows you to sort of do the walk, the latent spacewalk that we saw in the animation. It allows you to control that process a little bit and to move between different possibilities of generated objects using this interface here. So it's going to create a grid of images, and each one will be slightly different to the one next to it, and we can sort of navigate through that space and choose which direction we want to take the generated image. We'll then preview that for us, and we can then download that and create the images that we want to. Now this process requires you to run the model, so it means that the model actually needs to run in the clouds, and that's another part of this Runway process which there is some cost associated with. So while you're running, there's a cost per minute, so you need to make sure that you have credits for that. Again, it's a very small cost per minute, but it's just you need to make sure that you have credits in place and that you don't run the model for longer than you need to. I'm going to run the model now. It will take a few seconds to start up, and then we should start seeing our options appear within that grid at the top of the screen. Okay, so then once the model's up and running, we'll see in this space here our different options, and we can start navigating through these and choosing different directions we might want to take our generated image. We then have lots of different options then for downloading that and exporting them and generating different images off the back of that. So this is a kind of space where you can start playing around with this generation. If you had chosen to generate a text model, the process would be largely the same in terms of training the model, but you would have a different sort of interface here where instead of this vector, as they call it, so this grid of images, it would give you a text prompt where you could give it some starting text, and it would then generate text off the back of that. So this would kind of conform to the type of model that you're running. So that's a kind of run through of training a model. Hopefully this gives you some ideas about how you might use Runway and use machine learning to kind of enhance your work, to generate elements that might enhance your creativity in different ways. Check out the other videos to find different options for different tools, AI tools, some of which require less coding, less knowledge, and less money as well.